Hello, dear students. Today we'll study about three influential women in history who totally deserve to be honored for encouraging the women and leading the way for the others to follow. Let's listen to some beautiful lines illustrated by Albert Einstein. The woman who follows the crowd will usually go no further than the crowd. The woman who walks alone is likely to find herself in places no one has ever been before. Children, the women today, more than ever before, have gone against the grain of male-dominated societies and cultures. Year after year, confident, courageous, intelligent, and determined women from all over the country make it big and roar success in various fields. They are making their country proud with their sterling record of achievements. Even though there are numerous women deserving of honor in their field of excellence, but here we are going to study about three such women who have made a lasting impression in the world, despite the gender bias. Let's listen and understand about their struggles in becoming an inspiration to all, especially the women. Let's begin with Elizabeth Blackwell, who lived from the year 1821 to 1910. Elizabeth Blackwell was born in England in 1821, but she moved to the United States with her family when she was 2 years old. By the time she was 23, she had decided that she wanted to be a doctor. However, during her time, there were no female doctors in the United States. It wasn't easy for Elizabeth to study medicine. Most of the medical colleges she applied to turned her down. The men who taught medicine didn't think it was right for a woman to be a doctor. Finally, she was admitted to Geneva Medical College in New York. She was the only woman in a class of 150 students. The other medical students made things difficult for Elizabeth. They criticized her, refused to talk to her, and kept her from taking part in the classroom medical demonstrations. Despite all this, 2 years later, she graduated at the head of a class. In 1849, she became the first female doctor in the United States. Despite her training, Elizabeth could not get a job in any of the city hospitals. So, she opened her own hospital, the New York Infirmary for Women and Children, in a district where many poor people lived. When the American Civil War broke out in 1861, her hospital became a relief center for wounded soldiers. She also helped select and train nurses for the war. She established a medical school for women so that other women could become doctors. In 1868, she opened the Women's Medical College, the first of its kind in America. In 1907, Blackwell fell down a flight of stairs and was left almost completely mentally and physically disabled. On 31st May 1910, Blackwell died at her home in Hastings, Sussex, after suffering a stroke that paralyzed half her body. Elizabeth Blackwell never married. One of Elizabeth's famous quotes, "The idea of winning a doctor's degree gradually assumed the aspect of a great moral struggle, and the moral fight possessed immense attraction for me." Today, Dr. Blackwell serves as an important symbol of the barriers that women have overcome. Now let's read and understand about Emilie Pankhurst, who was an activist. Emilie Pankhurst was born in England in 1858. She was born in a family that had a long history of political and social activism. Not surprisingly, Emmeline grew up to be a champion of women's suffrage or the right to vote. During her lifetime, she held different municipal offices. As a poor law guardian and a registrar of births and deaths, She was witness to the inferior position of women in society and their legal and social oppression by men. She realized that the only means of emancipating women and reforming society at large was by ensuring political rights for women on par with those of men. In 1903, she founded the Women's Social and Political Union, that is WSPU, an exclusively female organization independent of all political parties. The motto of this body was "Deeds, not words," and it focused entirely on women's suffrage. The organization distrusted all promises and demanded immediate parliamentary action on the issue. Emilie and her supporters campaigned against the ruling party's candidates at elections, interrupted meetings of cabinet ministers, and launched hunger strikes, hoping to force the hand of the ruling government on the matter. The government, more often than not, responded by jailing them. When the First World War started in 1914, Emilie called off the suffrage campaign to support the country's war efforts. During the war years, she visited the United States, Canada, and Russia to encourage women to be part of the industrial workforce. In 1918, the British government passed a law that gave women over the age of 30 the right to vote. This was a significant achievement for Emilie and the WSPU. Later, shortly before her death in 1928, the British Parliament passed the law granting equal voting rights to men and women. It was in the same year that a woman crossed the Atlantic Ocean in an aeroplane for the first time. Today, the world recognizes Emilie Pankhurst as one of the most remarkable political and social agitators of the 20th century. One of Emilie's famous quotes is, "We have to free half of the human race, the women, so that they can help to free the other half." Now let's read about Amelia Earhart, who was an aviator. Amelia Earhart was born in the United States in 1897. After graduating from high school, she worked as a nurse in Canada during the First World War. Later, after the war ended, she worked as a social worker in Boston, teaching English to immigrant children. Aeroplane stunt shows were quite popular during the 1920s. Amelia too enjoyed such aerial displays. One day, after taking a 10-minute plane ride, she decided that she had to learn to fly. Through her determination and hard work, she was able to raise enough money to pay for her flying lessons. In 1928, she was invited to join the pilots Wilmer Sluggs and Lewis Gordon while they flew from America to England, thus making her the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. In 1932, she added to this distinction by becoming the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. She went on to make several such solo long-distance flights, making her the outstanding female pilot of her time. Earhart showed deep interest in the development of commercial aviation and was quite active in opening up the field to women. She lived in a time when women had very limited opportunities to make their mark in professions that had long been dominated by men. She spent much of her career advocating equal opportunities for women in aviation as well as in other fields. It was her dream that individuals would be valued one day for their abilities regardless of their gender. One of Amelia's famous quotes, "Women like men should try to do the impossible, and when they fail, their failure should be a challenge to others." Amelia's another quote, "There is more to life than being a passenger." So students, now I hope after listening about these three influential women, you must be feeling motivated. So now I suppose you have understood this section. Thank you and God bless you all.